Welcome to the world of travel rewards. I'm Christy Manning from Travel Point Playbook. I want to help you learn how to maximize points and miles, turn everyday spending into unforgettable experiences, and to discover strategies to travel smarter and see the world. So let's unlock the world of points and miles. Let's start learning more about points and miles. And first, let's talk about those terms. Points and miles are often used interchangeably. I often say them together. Classically, miles are what are referred to when you earn miles by flying on airlines. And points are what you earn when you use credit cards and you put points into a bank and then use those for travel. Next, let's talk about your credit score. That's what everyone worries about when we talk about having multiple credit cards. The biggest concern is how is that going to affect your credit score? And the biggest misconception is that will hurt your credit score. And when in fact, it's the opposite. It will help your credit score as long as you're always paying off those credit cards. Because the biggest percentage of your credit score is your credit utilization, meaning what is the percentage that you're actually using on the amount that the banks are lending you. So if the banks are lending you a lot of money through different credit cards, but you're only utilizing some of that money, your credit utilization is low and therefore your credit score is higher. Lastly, what is the value of a point? First of all, not all points are equal, so it is important to understand this concept. For instance, 50,000 Chase points are far more valuable than 50,000 United points, and we will dive into that a little bit more deeply in a second. But really, I want to talk about how you break down the value of a point. And it's a equation that you can use every time you're looking at whether you're going to sign up for a credit card, how you're going to spend on that credit card, and then when you're going to redeem those miles, what is the value of the points when you're redeeming? All right, let's do some basic math. So this is the cents per point calculation, or CPP. The value of a point is equal to the cost that you would pay if you were to use cash divided by the cost in points times 100. So to use an example, if you're looking to buy a flight and you see that the flight is $300 if you're going to pay cash, but is 25,000 points if you're going to use points, you divide 300 by 25,000 and you get 0.012, you multiply by 100, and the CPP for that flight to use points is 1.2 cents per point. Okay, so what does that mean? Is that good? Is it bad? Is it okay? So I generally like to break it down into first a bad redemption. Bad would be less than a cent per point. So for instance, if the flight was $200 to pay cash and it was $25,000, 25,000 points, that's 0.8 cents per point. That's not a great redemption. Now, in the world of points and miles, the classic saying is you do you. So if you're looking to not pay cash at all, you have a bunch of points you want to burn, the flight you're looking at is the perfect flight, then book it. It's whatever you want to do with your points. But if you just want to have a general concept of what you're getting with your points, especially when you're putting money on credit cards and potentially paying annual fees on credit cards, you want to make sure you're kind of getting as good a value as you can for those points. A decent reduction is about 1 to 2 cents per point. So that's kind of going back to my first example with a $300 flight and 25,000 points. So that's 1.2 cents per point. It's pretty decent. If you're using a credit card portal, which we're going to talk about, and I generally recommend it not using, generally you can expect to get about 1 to 1.5 cents per point. Again, pretty good, but as you get deeper into this world of points and miles, you will want to shoot for better than that. A good to great redemption is greater than 2 cents per point. So if this flight was actually going for $600 and if you were going to use points at 25,000 points, the cent per point is 2.4 cents per point. So that's pretty good. I think you could feel pretty good about that. redemption. And generally, you want to think about getting at least this or higher if you're booking flights. Hotels, we'll talk about, you may not be getting great redemptions all the time, but flights, particularly international flights, you should be shooting for above 2 cents per point. So this is important to know when you're signing up for a credit card bonus, whether it's a good offer, because you're going to see bonuses that look amazing, 100,000, 150,000 points for a sign-up bonus. But if you know that those points don't go very far, you're not going to generally get a good cent per point when you're redeeming those points, then it's actually not as good as it sounds. Okay, so I briefly mentioned transferable points earlier, and I want to dive a little bit deeper into them and why they are the most valuable points. And the number one reason is flexibility. If you think about it, you have points in a bank that you can transfer to multiple programs, whether that be an airline or a hotel. That is going to be much more valuable than if you have points in a single airline or hotel. So you can't move those around. You can only use it for their airline or hotel. So if you're going somewhere and you see that that airline doesn't go to the place you want to go, or they don't have that hotel at the place you're going, then your points can't be used and therefore they're not as valuable. So the top programs that carry transferable points and have travel partners are Chase, American Express or Amex, Capital One, and Citibank. There is the Bilt credit card as well, and that's kind of newer to the scene, and I'm not going to cover it too deeply here, but I should mention it. And then the important thing is once the points are in those programs, how do you use them? Generally, I mentioned this before, we do not recommend using them in the travel portal of the credit card. It seems like it's the easiest thing to do. You just go to, say, for instance, the Chase travel portal. You have the points already there. You search where you want to go. It gives you flight options. You use your points, done. But again, going back to the cents per point, you are not getting as good a redemption as you could if you were actually to transfer those points out of those programs into the travel partners that they have. So to do this, you first have to have accounts with these programs' travel partners. So let's use United as an example. I already used it before in talking about Chase and United. So they are travel partners. So if you have your points in your Chase account and you've decided you want to buy with your points a United flight, you will go to the Chase rewards section of your account and you will choose United. It will ask you how many points you want to transfer and you tell it. It will ask you what your United frequent flyer mile number is and you put it in there and voila, it will transfer those points to United. Once they're transferred, they're stuck there. You cannot transfer them out again. So you definitely want to be sure that you want to use them at the time you transfer. You also obviously have to do the work ahead of time to create these accounts with these travel partners so that when you're ready to book the flight, it is a pretty easy transfer. Generally, transferring points happens pretty instantaneous. Sometimes there's a bit of a delay. Certain programs, it's a longer delay, but generally you can assume that can happen pretty instantaneously. So this is a little overwhelming to look at first, but it helps, hopefully once I break it down, to sort of get a visual on what I mean by these travel partners and their association with the different banks. I do want to give credit to Award Wallet for making this chart. I did not make it. So the way it's broken down is if over to the left, it lists the Airline Alliances. And in the smaller print, below each alliance, you'll see each airlines. The more common airlines are listed in its own row, and then sort of the less common airlines are just listed in smaller print to the left. So looking at this right side of the chart, this is the Star Alliance. So you may recognize United is probably the top one from the Star Alliance, at least domestically, but there's definitely a lot of other good airlines internationally that are part of the Star Alliance. And these alliances are very, very important in the points and miles game. And we will get a little bit deeper into that. But let's look first. I think the easiest one to look at is Air Canada. So if you look at the second row, you see Air Canada Aeroplan, and you go across and you see that there's a lot of colors across. And that's because it is a travel partner of four of the main banks. So the first in blue is Chase, the second in green is Amex, the third or fourth over is darker blue is Capital One, and the last one is Bilt. I'm not mentioning Marriott. That's sort of an outlier that you can technically transfer Marriott points to some of these, but it's not a good redemption. So generally not recommended. So this shows you how having transferable points in even multiple different banks can be pretty valuable, because if you can find an airline that has multiple banks as partners, you can pool your points together and book a flight on that airline. It gets even better when the airlines are sort of part of this alliance and you can actually book different airlines with sort of, say, Air Canada miles. And we'll get into that a little bit. But I just, again, wanted you to have a visual on what I'm talking about when I say that these different banks have multiple travel partners that you can transfer to. And you'll see when it says 1-to-1, that's a 1-to-1 ratio of points transferring over. So if you transfer 10,000 Chase points over, you're going to get 10,000 Air Canada miles when it's sitting in your Air Canada account. So hopefully you have a better understanding of the value of a point. So let's talk about now, how do we earn these points? There are multiple opportunities to earn points. I'm going to go through the top ones. Really, the top one is earning sign-up bonuses. This is going to be your biggest bang for your buck. And what this looks like is when a credit card offers a certain amount of points for signing up for this credit card that you can earn if you spend a certain amount of dollars in a certain amount of time. So for instance, you can earn 50,000 points if you spend $3,000 in the span of 3 months. And you'll automatically get those 50,000 points in your account. The second category is spending categories. So what I mean by that are the multipliers you can get if you use a certain credit card to buy a certain thing. So certain credit cards, for instance, will have 2, 3, 4 times points for every dollar spent on dining, or 3 or 4 times points for every dollar spent on groceries. And I use those examples because for most of us, that's going to be a lot of the money we spend every month. And so if you're multiplying those dollars by multiples, 3 or 4, that's a lot of points you can earn each month. Number 3 are card referrals. So that is that these credit card banks want you, obviously, to refer to friends. And if you use a referral code or you send them a specific link from your account to sign up for their card, you will then get a certain amount of points back in your account after they sign up. They don't even have to meet the sign-up bonus. They just have to sign up and be approved for the credit card through the link that you gave them. And that can be generally maybe around 10,000, maybe 20,000 points. So that can add up over time if you're getting a lot of credit card referrals, and we'll talk more about that. And then the fourth one I want to talk about are shopping portals. And most credit cards do have their own shopping portals. So that means every time you shop through that portal, you get a certain amount of points back. So that is similar kind of to the concept of spending categories. You'll see that today Best Buy has 2 times points for any dollar spent on certain items in the store. And those points will then go into that travel account with that credit card. So we'll dive a bit more into each one of these categories. Okay, so let's dive a little bit deeper into some of these things I've talked about. And what are the main things that go into choosing which credit card you're going to sign up for. And as I said, sign-up bonuses are the most effective way to earn points. You can generally earn anywhere from 50 to 150,000 points when you sign up for these credit cards if you spend whatever amount of money they want you to spend in a certain amount of months. So generally that's somewhere between $500 and $5,000 to be spent in 2 to 6 months. So you do need to know that you can spend that money in that amount of time so you don't miss out on the sign-up bonus. And the other thing you also may want to know is in the fine print, it can say you can have multiples of those cards. So it may be that you can get this credit card now, and maybe you can get it again in a year or 2 years or 4 years. So it doesn't have to be the only time you get this sign-up bonus. So you generally, if you keep up with this, you can generally be getting these big boluses of hundreds of thousands of points in your account at least every 2 years. The downside is a lot of these do have annual fees, and sometimes they can be pricey. So that may turn people away, and especially when you're first doing this and you see some of these annual fees. It's a little bit of a sticker shock. But I guarantee you, you can generally earn a lot of the money back in the credit card perks that they give you. So it does take a little bit of work and a little bit of organization. But if you do this well and you study it enough, you can get all of the money back. So generally, you won't even be paying attention to annual fees anymore because you know you can get that money back. The other thing is when it comes up for the annual renewal, do you keep that card? Because maybe you decide you no longer want to keep up with these credits and pay this annual fee. You do have to keep a card for at least a year. It is very, very important not to cancel a card before the year is up. And in fact, the best way to do it is to let the annual fee hit at that year mark and then call or chat and ask to cancel the credit card within 30 days of that annual fee hitting. And the bank will reimburse you for that annual fee. So when you see an annual fee that's pricey, don't get too overwhelmed. Know that 1, you can make it back in credit card perks, and 2, you can cancel this card after a year. So you don't have to keep this card for years and years and be spending that money if that's not a valuable thing for you. The other thing you can do is that you don't have to actually cancel it, but at the year mark, you can consider downgrading it to a card that doesn't have an annual fee, but is in that same card family. And we can talk more about how to figure out what card that may be, but just know that that is an option. And the other way you want to other thing you want to do to factor in whether this is a valuable credit card for you is, again, those spending categories. You want to look at your everyday spend and find a card with multipliers in the categories that make sense for you. Again, dining and groceries is an easy one. That's generally what a lot of people are spending their money on. So those are valuable credit cards, even if some of those annual fees are high. And the other thing to not overwhelm you with, but you can technically get a new credit card every 30 to 90 days. Now, when you're new to this game, that does sound very overwhelming, but just know that eventually you may become comfortable with that. And that means that you may be able to earn a lot of sign-up bonuses and get a lot of points from spending categories and, be smart about the annual fees. Make sure you're getting some credits, but this can be very lucrative if you're doing this. And how do you keep track of all this? That's overwhelming to think about if you have a new card every 1 to 3 months and you're trying to track down whether you're using all of the credit card perks to make use of the fees that to make sure that you're getting the value out of these fees that you're paying. Well, the number one app I recommend is Travel Freely. It tracks your cards. It tells you when your minimum spend is due for your sign-up bonus. It tells you when your annual fee is going to hit, and it gives you options at that time for either downgrading and what the options would be for downgrading, or what would help make sense of whether to keep it or not keep it. It also has a function of recommending your next card. By already knowing what cards you have and knowing what the best offers out there are, it will recommend what cards you should get. There's another website that also has great recommendations, and it's 10x Travel, and that has a page called the Best Credit Card Offers page. So they, between those two, generally know what the best sign-up bonuses are available at any one time and can sort of guide you in this process. So based on what I just told you, it seems like there's no end to what card you could get and how many points you could earn. But that's not totally true. And one of the biggest reasons it's not true is because of the notorious 524 rule that Chase has. There are other rules with other credit card holders, but the Chase 524 rule is probably the most important one to know. So what it means is that anyone who has opened 5 or more personal cards in the last 24 months from any bank, not just Chase, will not be approved for a new credit card with Chase. So you have to keep track of which personal cards you have for any of the banks and when they were opened, because you generally do not want to go above 524 because Chase are very valuable cards and you want to be able to get them at any one time. So what are some more things to know about this? How are other ways you could potentially go above 524? So one other way that is an easy thing that people don't know about is the authorized users count towards your 524 count. So before I got into this game, it seemed like an obvious move to put my husband on my credit card or vice versa. If he was a primary card holder, I was an authorized user and we both had a card with our names on it. If you are doing this and you're committed to earning these points and going through cards and getting sign-up bonuses, generally we do not recommend being an authorized user on cards. The nice thing about how you pay for things these days is generally you don't have to show a card with your name on it anymore. Because of Apple Pay and because of the chip readers, no one knows whether your credit card has your name on it or your spouse's or someone else's name, for good or bad. So I don't find that being an authorized user is that useful anymore. And because of Chase 524, I have generally stopped doing authorized users altogether. Now, if you've already become an authorized user on an account, it's not over for you. You can easily remove yourself by contacting the bank and asking them to remove it, and generally that will remove it from your credit report. And if that doesn't work and you're trying to apply for cards with Chase and they're still denying you, you can call the Chase reconsideration line and explain that you were an authorized user and you no longer are, and they may reconsider your denial and allow you to have a card once you explain it to them. The other thing to know is I mentioned product changes. So that is when you've decided you no longer want to pay, say, an annual fee on a card and you want to change that to a different card that has no annual fee, but technically now you have a new card. That does not count towards 524. So you can go ahead and do that and not worry about it. But you do want to be careful when you say you're at Macy's and they're telling you that you can get 20% off if you sign up for their credit card. That will count toward your 524. Most retail cards will. Some of them won't, but it's difficult to know. So generally just assume that that will count toward your 524 status. What will not count toward your 524 status are business cards. And we will dive a little bit deeper into this, and it becomes a very important part of this because of the Chase 524 rule. Any business cards do not show up on your credit report, and that's why they don't count. Now, again, the Travel Freely app can be very useful in tracking your 524 status because this can become hard to keep track of when you are getting multiple credit cards a year. They have a whole section on what your 524 status is and when one card falls off and then you drop in your status. So what that looks like is, say you signed up for a personal card in January of 2025, and then you signed up for another one in June of 2025, and then you signed up for another one in February 2026. So you and March of 2026 are at 324. And you will remain at 324 until you then hit January of 2027, when that first card you signed up for drops off because now it's been more than 24 months. And then you go back to 224. And then when you hit the next mark, June, you go down to 124 because now it's been 24 months since that card was open. So that's sort of the general idea of the Chase 524 rule. And because of this rule, a lot of experts do recommend starting out with Chase cards. So sort of putting all your eggs in that basket in the beginning, gaining Chase points, and then as your number ticks up, and maybe you even hit 524 and you're okay, now you're done with Chase cards for a while, you can sort of venture into other banks until your 524 status drops. Okay, so I don't want to lose you here because this is where a lot of people say, I don't have a business, so I can't do this. But that's not true. There are many opportunities to have a quote unquote business, and you may not even realize that you have a business. To have a business, you just need to be engaging in some sort of activity with the intent of making a profit. You don't actually have to be making a profit. So one of the most common ways people have a business is that they sell things on Facebook Marketplace. That counts. Or maybe you give speeches, or maybe you like to take photos and you occasionally photograph friends and family for Christmas cards. Those are businesses. And you, again, don't necessarily have to be making a profit. Maybe eventually you plan to make a profit, then you have a business. So what are the next steps? You have to apply for the credit cards, but that's where people can get tripped up because they see things like EIN, the tax ID number, or what's the type of business or what's your role in the business, and they get intimidated. And I'm hoping I can take you through exactly how to go through an application so that you're not intimidated and you can have your first business card. And trust me, once you have your first one and you realize it's not that big a deal, you'll get another one and then another one. And then maybe you actually create a business because it sounds kind of cool and it seems easier than you thought. So on the business card application, the first thing it's going to ask you is your business name. And unless you have applied to have a business name, do not make something up. What you want to put is your exact legal name. So for me, that's Christina Marie Manning. I don't want to say Christie's, shop or Christie's Facebook shop. I just want to say Christina Marie Manning. One of the other lines it's going to ask you is what's your business revenue? And this can be a very rough estimate of what you hope to make if you were to continue doing this business. One of the other lines, again, I said is tax ID or EIN. You do not have to have one to fill this application out. They will let you put your social security number. Sometimes you can just put your social security number. Other times there's a drop down to switch it from saying EIN to saying social security number. The business address can be your home address. Your time in business. So it wants you to say when was your business created. You can just pick a start date and stick with it. I just picked one of when I generally started selling things on Facebook Marketplace regularly, and I wrote that down in my notes, and that is the date I always put. And then for the type of business, you must put sole proprietorship. And then there's a section that asks for your business industry. So just choose whatever is the closest. Sometimes there's options like miscellaneous sporting goods or something like that. I often choose one that says miscellaneous. When it says role, you're going to put owner. And then there's going to be a personal section, and you can just put the same information there that you would put in a personal credit card. You definitely want to make sure you put your joint household income for your personal earnings. That is still I believe the biggest part of whether they will lend you more credit is they just want to know what your household income is and whether you can afford this card. And again, for that personal section, you're still going to use your social security number. So as I mentioned previously, this is an important part of points and miles because of the Chase 524 rule. If you are ticking up in your 524 status and you want to get more cards, you can start getting business cards and you will not be restricted. I do understand that this is probably not for beginners, so you don't have to start here. You can start with personal cards. Again, people recommend starting with the personal cards in the Chase system. But there are some really good business cards, especially business cards in the Chase system, that you can be getting. So don't let this stop you up. I hope this makes it a little less intimidating. Okay, so now you have the credit card. Let's maximize the spending on it. And by that, I don't mean you're going to just start spending on things you wouldn't have already bought. The point of this is you're going to use this on things you're already spending money on. You just need to redirect what you're using to spend that money. So what that means, number one, is that a lot of your monthly bills need to be put on a credit card as much as possible. I know it's annoying to have to switch that every time you get a new credit card, but it gets easier. I have kept a running checklist in my notes app on my phone that I just run through every time I get a new card that I want to work on a sign-up bonus. So it might take me 30 minutes to sit there and go through each one of my accounts and switch the credit card that I want to use for the next bill. You can even use this for your income and property taxes. Now that is going to come with a fee, but a lot of times the math is going to work out in your favor to still pay that fee. Because if you're, say, working on a sign-up bonus, or if there's a multiplier for that category somehow, then you're probably going to still come out on top, especially if when we're talking about redemptions and then not cent per point, if you're getting good redemptions for those points, then it is still worth it to be using credit cards even if there's a credit card fee. So if I'm working on a sign-up bonus, it's almost always worth it to pay those fees, even if they're on the high 2%, like 2.8%, whatever. Generally, it's still worth it. If I'm not working on a sign-up bonus, then I am going to want to make sure I'm using a card that I'm still going to get, say, 2 times points or 3 times points for, say, income or property taxes. So there are certain cards like the Capital One Venture X that's 2 times everything. So that's an easy one to use. So sometimes there's some complicated math involved. I don't like to get too complicated. I just like to know that as long as I'm using 2 or 3 times points for a fee that's, up to 2%, a little higher, then I'm probably good. Especially if I'm working on a sign-up bonus. I'm almost always good at that point. Another way to kind of get around fees is to look at PayPal bills. It's a section of PayPal that you may not have known was there. And certain, say, utility companies or certain counties where you pay property taxes will be listed there. So, for instance, my utility bill is listed there and my insurance company is listed there. So I can just pay the bill with my credit card on PayPal bills. You just link your credit card and there's no fee. So that's a pretty easy thing to do. And then sometimes there are credit cards that you get a multiplier for certain months by using PayPal. So that's even better. Sadly, you can not use your credit card for mortgage payments yet. I'm hoping that's going to change with Built or some other credit card issuers in the future. But right now you cannot pay your mortgage. Generally, you cannot pay car payments or really any loans with credit card because it's kind of like you're paying a loan with another loan. So that's generally why you can't do that. There are a few workarounds that is sort of more expert level, but generally you can't do that. Some other tricks that can be really useful are to use gift cards to pay things. And that sounds a little bizarre. Generally, you think of gift cards as being given as gifts, but there are certain credit cards that have really high multipliers at, say, office stores. And office stores carry gift cards. And sometimes those office stores have Visa or MasterCard gift cards that are where there's a sale and there's not a fee to use that card. So if, say, you go to this office store and it's 5 times points at that office store, so you get a couple of these Visa gift cards for free because there's no fee to use them, and then you go and use those credit cards, Visa and MasterCard gift cards to pay something that wouldn't have otherwise had a multiplier on it. So you could even say your kid's preschool does charge a fee to pay the tuition, but you're going to use a Visa gift card that you got 5 times points for. So it is still more valuable to use that than to just pay with your checking account. Another trick is if you, say, go with a group to dinner and you ask everyone at the table if you can just put it on your card and they Venmo you or PayPal you or something. You have just put a high amount on your card that it's not necessarily even your money because you're getting some money back for. Or if you're a physician and you get money to go to continuing medical education events, but that it gets reimbursed to you. So you put the money on your credit card for the flight and the hotel and the registration, and then you get reimbursed. You can have that money, you're gaining points with something you're not actually using your own money on spend. Okay, so I've mentioned referral bonuses before, and I want to dive a little bit deeper. So most banks offer a referral bonus, generally around 5 to 20,000 points if someone uses your referral link. So know that there is a cap. Each bank will cap it per year how much you can earn in referral bonuses. So it's about 50 to 100,000 points per bank per year. The other thing that's important to know is that these referral bonuses are taxable. So other things like sign-up bonuses and other ways I mentioned that you can earn points are not taxable, but referral bonuses are. And you will get a 1099 form from each bank. And the points are valued at 1 cent. So 100,000 points is $1,000 of, quote, income earned, which you will then get taxed on. That can turn people away. I would just recommend not stressing about it. You will still come out ahead, way ahead. So I sort of just ignore this and move on, but it is up to you. And maybe you just refer a few people a year, so it's not that much. In order to refer people, you will generally have a way within your account to find a referral link. Sometimes it's a little more hidden than I would like it to be. So I just tend to Google it, and you can just Google refer a friend for whatever bank you're referring to for, and that will generally produce a referral link if you just put in a few information points. Now, the other way to really make this lucrative is to have a player 2 or P2. And that is just someone else that you're going to refer to and they're going to refer to, and you're going to sort of rack up the points between each other. Generally, P2s are someone else in your household, a spouse, maybe a parent, but it can be a friend. It doesn't have to be someone in your household. What you're going to do is copy each other's moves. And in doing so, you're going to earn double the sign-up bonus, especially if you're in the same household. So what that looks like is I get a credit card. I use my referral link and send it to my husband. He signs up for the same credit card. Now I get the referral points and we both get sign-up bonuses. And then sometimes he can refer me back because some referral links are good for any card family, not just one particular card. So it bounces back to me. I get another sign-up bonus. He gets referral points. So in doing this, you can really rack up points fast. It is important to know that certain banks don't let you share points, even if you're in the same household. Or if in order to do so, you have to make a phone call and prove you're the same household, or you have to at least have one account linkage, say through an authorized user. So it kind of depends on the bank. It's really not a big deal because in the end, you can still book travel for someone else. So you can still take your points, move them to a travel partner, and then book a flight, say for your spouse. So in the end, you can still share points, but it could get a little bit more complicated. But this is one of the reasons I don't like to have an authorized user is this whole P2 game, because if you are an authorized user on a card, you can't then get the card. You can get the card yourself, but you can't get a sign-up bonus. So you're only going to be eligible for a sign-up bonus if you don't already hold the card or if you're not an authorized user on the card. The other thing that tends to happen is that many P2s are skeptical. They don't want a bunch of credit cards. They don't want to do the math. They don't want to be organized about this. And generally, they might think you're a little bit crazy. They will think you're less crazy when they start going on the nice trips and staying in the nice hotels or flying business class. But they're still potentially not going to be willing to put in the work to get the points. So you can just do it for them. If they're willing, you get their information, the social security number and date of birth and whatnot that you may already have, and you sign up for them and you keep track for them. And it is as if you're just gaining double points yourself, but obviously under their name. So it is a very useful tool if you're willing to put in the work to do it. Another thing I want to say about referral links is that sometimes it's not the best sign-up bonus for that person you're referring to. So, for instance, I may have my referral link might be good for a 60,000 point sign-up bonus for a card, but there may be another public offer out there that's 90,000 points. So it doesn't totally seem fair to give someone that referral link for a smaller sign-up bonus just so that I can get the referral points. So I will generally look at my Travel Freely app, which does tend to list the highest offer out there for each card, and make sure that I'm giving the best referral to my friend or to someone that I'm helping out with this points and miles game. Shopping portals are another great way to earn points. Most major banks, airlines, and hotels all have their own shopping portals, and as long as you shop through that portal, you get points. Usually it's about 2 to 5 times bonus points on something you're buying, but over the holidays, it can get much higher than that, up to sometimes 25 times points. So that's a great time to be using shopping portals. Most people feel that Rakuten is the best shopping portal. I certainly have found it to be the most lucrative and easiest to use. If you find it too overwhelming to go through all of the shopping portals every time you want to buy something, then just go with Rakuten. That being said, there's another website called cashbackmonitor.com that will show you for any one store that you want to shop at what the multipliers are for each of the different portals. So that's a great way to also compare if you are looking to get the best deal. But if you do want to stick with Rakuten, let me walk you through a few things to know about them. So by default, this is a cashback site. However, if you have an American Express membership rewards earning card, then you can opt to have your rewards come to you as Amex points instead of cash. So you just, at the beginning when you set it up, you just have to link your Amex card to your Rakuten account. It can just be one of your Amex cards that's a membership rewards earning card, and then you're done. So that means from then on out, anytime you get points when you shop, it goes to your Amex card. The other cool thing is that you do not actually have to pay for the product you're buying with an Amex card. So you can be, say, working on a sign-up bonus or have a multiplier that you want to use on a different card, and you purchase the item with that card. But just by the mere fact that you've bought it through Rakuten, you will automatically get whatever multiplier Rakuten is offering at that store on that day. So it's what you'll hear people talk about stacking. It's all about stacking these points. Now, when you see the percentages, you're going to see something listed on a store you want to buy at. So say I shop at Carter's a lot for my kids, and a lot of times it's 2% or 3% cash back is how they'll list it. So they'll list it in the cash back percentage, but if you are doing this with your Amex card, that percentage equates to the multiplier points. So if it's 3% cash back, it's 3 times points that you will get if you have this set up. Rakuten also has an extension for your computer. So if you are on any sort of website, it will tell you if Rakuten has a multiplier for that day. So that's really easy. I find it a little bit more difficult if I'm on my phone to have to remember to go through the Rakuten app because it won't do that on your phone the same way it will do it on your computer. You can also earn points while flying. This is where the miles of points and miles comes into play. You do have to have a frequent flyer account with the airline to earn miles, and you should have your partner and your kids have accounts as well. That being said, you're only going to earn miles when you're paying cash. So if you're like me and you buy most of your flights with points, then you're not going to be able to earn miles. But that's okay. There will be times we're going to use cash, so you should remember this. You do, again, want to have everyone in your family have a frequent flyer account with the program where you're flying, even your kids. The nice thing with kids is these points don't expire until after they're 18. So for adults, you have to check with each airline, but there are certain rules about if there's no activity in your account for, say, 48 months, then your points will expire. But that rule does not apply to kids. So that's a great opportunity to start your kids with points and miles so that when they turn 18, they might have a stash if you have been paying cash for flights and earning miles for them, if you've linked each time you fly your itinerary with the frequent flyer mileage program. You do want to make sure you sign up before you fly so that when you do book your flight, you can link your itinerary at that point. And then you'll want to have some sort of organizational system to save your account numbers somewhere so that you remember them the next time you're flying or the next time you want to see how many points you have. The other thing that will come up is buying points from an airline. That's almost always a bad idea. Typically, the price is not worth it. There can be times where it's worth it. So say you have just under a certain amount of miles or points to buy a flight with points, then you can top those off by buying some miles, and that might make sense. Experts in this game will sometimes buy miles, but at this point, generally, it's not a great idea and you should not do it. We can't talk about airline points and miles without touching on the Southwest Companion Pass. This is one of the most lucrative strategies in the game, is to have a Southwest Companion Pass. It allows you to take a companion on any Southwest flight that you fly as long as you have that pass. There's no limit to how many flights you can take with a companion while you have the pass. There are no blackout dates. It also works on cash and points flights, which is rare. Other airline companion passes typically only work when you pay in cash. But with Southwest, you can pay in points for your flight and then have your companion fly for free. The other thing is that once you earn the companion pass, it is good for the remainder of that calendar year it was earned, plus the entire following calendar year. So if you are smart about this, you earn this in January of any year, and then you have it for 2 years. So the best strategy to do this is to open credit cards that earn you sign-up bonuses that equate to 135,000 miles, which is what you need to get to qualify for a companion pass. In order to do this, you have to open 2 Southwest cards. One of them has to be a business card because you can't do this with 2 personal cards. So what you do is at the end of the year, you open 1 personal card, you wait 30 days, and then you open 1 business card. You put some spend on both of those cards, but you absolutely do not want to go over the minimum spend to earn that sign-up bonus. Because if you do, you're locked in at that year and you only have 1 more year to use it. But if you wait until January and then you finished putting the minimum spend to get that sign-up bonus on both of those cards, you will then earn enough points to qualify for a companion pass. Once you have that companion pass, you have to designate who your companion is, but you can change that person up to 3 times per calendar year, which is also amazing. So I want to go through this in detail because it is very important to understand. So the first step in earning the Southwest Companion Pass is that you have to earn 135,000 points. You can technically do this by flying Southwest, but that would be challenging unless you're a business traveler that truly travels that much and only flies Southwest. The easier way to do it is to use Southwest credit cards. You cannot do it by just transferring points to Southwest, for instance, from Chase. Southwest is a travel partner of Chase, so one might think by just transferring 135,000 points from Chase to Southwest that would work, but it does not. So the first step in earning these points through credit cards is to open a Southwest business card and a Southwest personal card, as I mentioned before. There are 5 options with sign-up bonuses ranging from 40 to 80,000 points per card. You cannot do this with 2 personal cards because you can't have earned a sign-up bonus on 1 personal card within the past 24 months in order to get a sign-up bonus with another personal card. So you do have to get a business card also. And remember that these are Chase cards, so you also can't be over 524 in order to get either of these, even the business card, because you can't qualify for a business card if you're at 524 or above. So even if you're at 424, I would recommend getting the business card first and then getting the personal card. Typically, the strategy does get you around 125,000 points, and then you have to put more spend on those cards to get the full 135,000 points. And then once you get it, you start using it. The nice thing is you've also earned 135,000 points that you can use for flights. And that's a lot of miles. So you can truly probably get through at least a year, if not the 2 years of having the companion pass with using those miles for the first person that you're booking and then having the companion fly with you for free. While domestic travel is something you're going to do regularly and is easy to book using points with most programs, The true power of points and miles lies in international business class bookings. Unlike domestic flights, international business class seats are lie flat seats. It is a truly aspirational way to travel, and once you do it, it will be hard to ever travel in economy for long-haul flights again. You will get premium dining and service, your seat will turn into a bed, and you'll get amenities like slippers and even sometimes pajamas. You will also automatically get access to the airline's exclusive airport lounge. These are the type of redemptions that are 5 to 10 cents per point with that CPP calculator we talked about before. Booking international flights with points can be a little complicated and a little daunting at first. The more you do it, the better you'll get at it. You can even run practice searches to get more comfortable with doing it. Remember that no redemption is perfect. As a leader in points and miles taught me, perfect is the enemy of great. So if you find something great, book it, because if you wait for something as perfect, you might miss out on a great flight. The more flexible you can be, the better. 3 of the main things involved in booking travel with points are dates, destination, and price. So you need to be flexible with at least one of those things in order to be able to use points effectively. So if you can't be flexible with dates, say because of your work schedule or your kid's school schedule, then you have to be flexible with price. And that's okay. You do you. You just have to know that you'll need to earn more points for your trips. You also can't beat yourself up when you hear of these dream redemptions other people have made. They were probably able to be more flexible with their dates or their destination. Do remember to check the points value calculator I talked about in the beginning to make sure it's at least a good deal. You'd like it to be more than 2 cents per point and definitely greater than 1. Best times for booking are around 11 to 12 months ahead of time for these international business class seats, because that's when the airlines release their saver tickets and hotels open up their stays. So if you're not looking that far out, you might see point prices that seem crazy, and you're wondering, why did you even get into this game? Because you're not going to be spending 300,000 points on a one-way flight. Well, that's because those aren't saver tickets. So you do want to be organized and shoot to book an international business class ticket far out if you want those saver tickets. There are resources that tell you to the day when certain airlines release their tickets. That being said, you could also be super last minute because some of these saver tickets are also released 1 to 4 weeks ahead of time. Or you can subscribe to some of these newer websites like Straight to the Points or Thrifty Traveler that will give you alerts when flight deals are released, and that can be super useful. It is very important to not transfer your points out until you're absolutely ready to book, because point transfers are irreversible. So once you transfer them, they cannot be moved back out. Rarely, there can be phantom award space, say on an alliance partner site or one of these search engine sites. So it is best to call the airlines when you see what you want to confirm that flight does exist. And some of the airlines are actually willing to hold those flights for you, so it's worth asking that as well. And they may hold it from 1 to 3 days for you, and that will give you time to get your points transferred and then book the flight. There are 3 steps in booking these award flights. There's the research part of it, where you need to find out what these points costs are for the flights you're hoping to book. And then you need to make a plan to earn those points. Or maybe you already have the points, and that's great. And then you book the flight. Now, just a reminder that booking that flight might be 11 to 12 months out when those saver tickets are released. So if you already have those points available to you, great, you're ready to go. But if you don't, you need to be looking maybe even 2 years out to know what those flights are going to cost you in points and make a plan to start earning those points so that when those saver tickets are released at 11 to 12 months out, you're ready to go. So where do you even start to find out what these flights are going to cost you? I do like to start out using Google Flights, even though that's not going to show you what the points values are because they only list the cash rates for those flights on Google Flights. But it will show you what the potential routes and airlines are. So you start to get an idea of the airlines you'll be flying or the airports, the best airports to fly to. And I do always recommend looking at one-way flights. This is going to give you more options, and it's not more expensive the same way that cash tickets are more for one-ways. So it is definitely better to always look at one-way flights for point tickets. It will allow you actually to potentially fly one airline there and another airline back. And even if you're flying the same airlines there and back, if you were to have to change one of the legs of your trip, you still have the other leg intact. Especially when you're talking about these saver tickets that are tough to get, you do not want to have to cancel both the legs of that trip. So stick with one-way flights. So once you've figured out which airlines you might be flying, then you need to look at that transfer partner chart I showed you before to figure out what points currencies you're going to need. And you want to know what banks partner with those airlines. You can also look at some of these award search sites that can be very helpful. There are many of them, and sometimes it's helpful to look at a couple of them. Most of them have free options, but all of them do have subscription options that give you more things to view, more options. So there's point.me, Roam, Roame, Points Yeah, Straight to the Points, and Seats.aero. And Aero is spelled AERO. I mentioned before the benefit of these airline alliances when booking travel with points, and I want to go into that a little bit more deeply now. So there are three major airline alliances: the Star Alliance, One World, and the Sky Team. This is another visual of the breakdown of these different alliances. The reason this is so great is you can book with one airline, but actually be flying on another airline. But the price is set by the airline you book through. So that price might actually be a lot lower than what the airline you're flying with is posting on their own website. So go in with the mindset, I want to book a flight on X Airlines. They are a member of Y Airline Alliances or Alliance. What options do I have to book X Airlines flight with miles from any member of Y Alliance? You can often find the same flight on a partner airlines for cheaper, like I said. So United flights can often be found on Singapore Airlines sites for much cheaper. Some of these high-yield airlines, that have transfer partners of almost all the banks, are for the Star Alliance, Air Canada and Singapore Airlines. For Sky Team, Air France and KLM, and they're part of the Flying Blue program. And for One World Alliance, British Airways. This is why transferable points are way more valuable than single airline points. They just give you a lot more options. Again, I want to give you a visual on this. So this is zoomed in on that original chart I showed you that Award Wallet created. And this is the Star Alliance. And again, that second row is Air Canada Aeroplan. And you can see all the banks that it transfers to, or that transfers to it. And then further down, what I've highlighted, Singapore Airlines, they actually transfer from all four of the major banks: Chase, Amex, Citibank, and Capital One. We've spent all our time talking about redeeming points for flights, but there are are also hotels that you can utilize with points. I'm not going to spend as much time talking about hotels, but they're also a great option and one that I utilize a lot. They do tend to be less valuable than flights in terms of the cent per point you can get when booking these. The hotels that are transfer partners of the major banks are Hilton, IHG, Marriott, and Hyatt. Of those, Hyatt is by far the most valuable when it comes to cent per point. They are also the only one that still has a fixed award chart. And what I mean by that is their award rooms are fixed based on the hotel category that they are, which for them is 1 through 8, 1 being the lowest category, 8 being the highest, and on what season it is, whether it's high or low season. So they're never going to change that versus these other hotels that are dynamic pricing. So you can never really predict what a hotel is going to cost you, and therefore you can't really save or have sort of a really solid idea of how many points you're going to need to save for that hotel stay because it can change at any one time. So that is one of the reasons everyone loves Hyatt. The other reason is that you're going to get more bang for your buck with your points with Hyatt. For instance, a high-end property with Hyatt is going to be 40,000 points, but a high-end Hilton is going to be 150,000 points. So it's just important to know that, again, when you're seeing these credit card offers out there and it's offering you 100,000 points to sign up for a Hilton card, that's actually not that valuable when you compare it to, say, a Hyatt. Now, Hilton can be very valuable, especially their credit cards can be valuable when you're talking about their free night certificate, but that is a bit more detail than we're going to get into right now. I've really just scratched the surface when it comes to points and miles, but I hope I've gotten you a little bit closer to understanding what this is all about and why it's so valuable, and maybe enticed you to try it out. Even if that's just opening one credit card first and seeing what it's all about, or booking that first trip with points. There's a lot more to learn, and I'm always happy to teach you. So please reach out to us at the Travel Point Playbook. I do want to give credit for the content I used for this talk. A lot of it I took from 10x Travel's free online course at www.10xtravel.com, and that's where I learned originally. In addition to these other lovely ladies, first at Point Me to First Class and at the Travel Mom Squad. They both have podcasts that they release every week and are fabulous, and I highly recommend them.